Hello, hello. This is your host, Jasmine Harden, and I am welcoming you back here on another episode on the platform. Let's talk about it. I am excited to be here, get this episode recorded as soon as possible because, guys, I have an announcement. I will be taking a bit of a break. This episode will come out 2 weeks after I've recorded this, but I definitely recognize that I've been going hard since the beginning of the year. It is now getting closer to the end of March, which is crazy. So I definitely wanted to give myself a needed break, not only to refresh myself creatively, but also to take care of some extracurricular things I have going on outside of the podcast. So that little break will give me some time. But in the meantime, I will not leave you guys completely hanging. I do plan on doing some live streams on my Instagram for the podcast. So definitely be on the lookout for those. I will be posting ahead of time and trying to gather some information on when the best time to go live would be so that people can interact. But I'll just be doing that in the meantime while I am preparing for the next little season of the podcast that will be coming out after this. But this episode's going to be pretty straight to the point. It's just going to be me here. And I'm just going to be talking about something that came up for me a couple weeks ago, honestly. I wanted to make sure I recorded this when I felt like I could do so without being overly emotional about the topic. But it's a topic I'm very passionate about, and I felt like it was an appropriate time to bring it to the platform just because I actually felt like I had a way to talk about it with some guidance and um, a bit more of a storyline in a way that didn't just seem like it was me ranting and complaining. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I really do. And I'm going to go ahead and get into it, get started. So, like I said, this topic kind of came to me a couple weeks ago, honestly. Um, I was just happened to be talking to a coworker at work, and it's funny because when she listens to this episode, she'll know exactly who I'm talking about. So, shout out to you, girl. Throw a little bit of a applause for my coworker because I felt like it was a really good conversation. And I'll only be sharing a snippet of how great of a conversation it really was. But we were at work and we were just discussing, and you're gonna have to follow along with me here because I'm gonna talk about a lot of things, but I'm gonna tie it all together. So just bear with me if it seems like you're like, where is she going with this? But we were talking about workplace safety. And it was because an incident had taken place recently at work that kind of sparked the conversation of us like, just evaluating and analyzing the company's protocol on certain safety protocols that, they had in place. We are fairly new to the job, so we were just discussing like, from the perspective of someone who's new, like, oh wow, like this is something that I feel like is something I take serious because it to me reflects the character of the business in a way of like how they handle safety and things like that. And we just started talking about a bunch of different stuff. Not even just it branched off, the conversation branched off to beyond just our company, but just America and the the normalcy of kind of a lackadaisical approach to safety, whether it be in businesses or whether it be in schools and the government, government buildings, and just how there's different levels of security protocol measures that are taken depending on where you're going to be at, and how, and you notice there's a pattern specifically, schools came up reoccurring, how there's a pattern of there's systemic levels of safety protocols that are placed into certain schools, and the demographic of those schools typically will determine that. And it's typically schools of predominantly colored children who will have higher safety protocols than others. When in reality, we've seen historically that as far as mass shootings and things of those nature, those crimes of those nature, guns being brought into schools to hurt students. Um, Historically, those crimes are not committed by people of color. Not saying that they are never committed by people of color, but more often than not, they seem to be committed by a very niche population of the society. I'll put it that way. And because of that, it led us down a path of just talking about how things like gun control and those type of political conversations are so interesting because, you look at victims and survivors of mass shootings, and I've seen open house forums and town halls for people of the community, members of the community to come and express their experiences to lawmakers to, persuade them or attempt to persuade them to understanding why gun control and things like that are important and aren't just a conversation that should be swept under the rug. And what I noticed is that, long story short, they don't care. There's too much money to be made. And just overall, if you look at historically in this country, we have had a large part in the arms race of the world. Like, we are a very pro gun country, to be frank here. And because of that, seeing children from like the Parkland shooting, which came up in our conversation with my coworker, seeing children at the Parkland shooting crying out to lawmakers saying like, please, help us. Like, we shouldn't be terrified to go to a building that not only I'm legally required to go to, but is a building that at one point in this nation was not a target practice ground for people to come and inflict heinous, unspeakable crimes, such as the Parkland shooting. And, as the conversation was building, my coworker asked me, what was the shooter's relationship to the school? Was it a person who went to the school or was it an intruder? So I didn't know the answer, so I proceeded to look it up. And I saw that it was a 17-year-old boy, that it took place, and this is the Parkland shooting in Florida. Um, I'm referencing 17 years old, happened on Valentine's Day, which I thought was ominous. Um, and several people were injured and killed. And I thought that was so interesting. The young boy was not black. I can't remember exactly what his race was, but I know for a fact he was not black. Um, and long story short, he is now doing life without parole. And one could argue, like, okay, he's a minor. He was 17. I even do not condone or think that it's appropriate that the government should sentence children to death. Definitely don't agree with that at all. I don't even really think that it's necessarily the 17-year-old's fault, which is a deeper conversation. I think the 17-year-old is a reflection of the society that they have been raised in. But what I do hear and see in that situation as that conversation built, which caused me to be here talking about this today, is that although I don't condone him being sentenced to death for what he did, historically and to this day, not just, oh, this is a part of history and it's no longer the case. This is still historically and present day affecting Black men, especially. But the disparities of crime, the due process, the lack of due process, and due process for those who are unfamiliar with the term just means, does the crime fit the punishment? Are the punishments that are being allotted to certain crimes fitting for what took place? That's essentially what it's talking about. It's much deeper than that, but that's just layman's terms. So the due process that is missing from a lot of black male criminal cases in this country, and have been since the very beginning of the criminal justice formation in this country, is that black men historically are sentenced to death for crimes that are by astronomically big margins, way less heinous than going into a school and killing a bunch of people. Going into a church with a racially motivated bias and hatred to target specific members of a certain race. Because the young man who went into a church and shot up that black church went in, if you go and do your research and listen to the survivors' accounts, they talk about how he went in and he targeted black men specifically. He spared women, and which is a whole, again, loaded subject I'm not going to get that bit deep into. But I just want to mention that because it just speaks to how, and I want to remind you, for anyone who's missing context here, that young man was brought to Burger King after he committed the crime that he committed. But there are black men who have stolen property, not even killed people, that are being sentenced to death. Sold drugs that they didn't even create. They're just profiting off of, sentenced to death. So, it just leads me to a point of frustration, disgust, to know that people are so willingly blind and selectively outraged by things in our society, and the systemic killing of black men in this country has become so normalized that the outrage behind that is dismissed so often. And I just needed to take a moment on this platform and encourage people to sit with things like that a little bit longer and figure out how you want to be a part of the change in this country that takes place, that keeps things from that happening. And I'm not saying any one person is supposed to have all the answers, but I do genuinely believe that people have to create the change in their own lives that they want to see in the world, because everything starts with one person. So to think that you aren't important in addressing those disparities that are happening in our country is not true. It's simply a fallacy. It's simply a coping mindset, but it's not a honest growth and accepting mindset. It's choosing to look away from things that are staring us directly in the face. And it's understandable that some of these things are hard to look at and to address and to figure out how to allow it to be true in our world, but not let us be depressed and discouraged and downtrodden and feeling like we have to accept this reality, that this reality is all that will ever be. Because I genuinely don't believe that. I genuinely do not believe that black people, especially black Americans, are just doomed to suffer forever. And that's not to say that I think that black people in this country have to stay in America to achieve the liberation that they so desperately seek. Because I'm also open mm, to knowing that the world is bigger than just what we're used to. I'll say it that way. But just sit with things that aren't fun to sit with. It's really just the main theme of what I'm trying to get around here, because I don't think that it's necessarily something that should occupy your mind every day or become an obsessive thought that you can't live without fear, you can't accept this reality. I don't think it should be something that should be thought upon on that level, but I just encourage you to think about and bring these up in conversations when you talk about when you hear things on the news and you're you're hearing stories that are being shared by others, and consider like, okay, yes, this person did commit this crime, or yes, they may have done something wrong, but was there due process in their experiences? You know, like what who has a say so in the decisions that are being made? In what way, as a citizen of this country, am I able to impact the systems in place that, enable these disparities to continue? I know that was it was a lot, but I just really it's really just a topic that I feel like it's hard to talk about, but it still needs to be discussed. Because the more we act like our reality isn't our reality, the more they're able to ensnare and trap us to think that we are each other's enemy, that we don't deserve to give each other the benefit of the doubt, that we don't deserve to give each other empathy, and we don't deserve to give each other respect because of so many outside circumstances. And it's all so divisive, especially the criminal justice system, especially when you see at how drastically different the experiences of non-black people and just different races in general, because there are different stereotypes for different races. So this is not to just put the black experience as the only experience, because I'm well aware that there are several different experiences that people of marginalized communities can have in all types of different institutions in this country, whether it be medical, judicial, you know. But I just want us to be real with each other and be able to really hold each other accountable with the right mindset, with a grounded, educated, thought out stance that doesn't source from anything but the truth. Well, that was all I really had to say on that. I didn't have too much to say about it. I think, like I said, it's really more so something that I want people to think about and do their research on and learn about the history of this country, especially as it relates to men of color, and how the justice system in particular was created in a way to institutionalize the murder of black men and black people, and how things like black codes, Jim Crow, the different eras of black history in this country, how Reconstruction, we had some time to really bask in the beauty of citizenship for the first time in this country, and what we did during that time as a people to then move forward to Jim Crow and things like black codes, and to move into the civil rights movement, and just to know that with every era in this country, we have never not thrived and survived. But in every instance in this country where we have thrived and survived, there have been goalposts moved, and there have been disparities that have been systemized to ensure we are unable to grow as a community. And um even if we were allowed to grow, it was only within a certain margin before we were then made a target. Um and just how that repeated generational trauma of attempting to build wealth, attempting to build community in this country, and what it has done to our culture, and how it's clearly seen in things like consumerism, and how big consumerism is a part of our culture. And it's just deep. It's really deep. And I just encourage people to do their research, because knowing your history isn't meant to, when people say know your history, especially me, because I'm big on a know your history. Okay. I will quickly tell someone, look it up. Okay. Because the information is out there. But it goes beyond just knowing it, because knowing it isn't enough. Knowing it can just make you bitter. If we're being honest, and I was talking about that a couple episodes back, relinquishing that bitterness that maybe some knowledge could cause you, but using that emotion and that raw passion that you have, that learning about the history can give you, utilizing it to make something, a legacy even, that can you can leave behind for, even if your generation isn't able to benefit from it, generations that come behind us will be able to generate, or to be able to benefit from it. So that's just the type of mindset I like to encourage on the podcast. This isn't to be all doom and gloom, because I think it's amazing personally to think that we come from such a trivial and, you know, it unremarkable in a way. Like it's crazy when you really look back on the history of Black people in this country, how it's almost like you can't even put into words how unique and divine and egregious and, you know just, it leaves me speechless, honestly, how how much of an inheritance the Black generations of today have, because without all the experiences of those who came before us, we literally would not be here. We literally wouldn't even be here. There are several instances where our people, our culture, our vibrancy, our beauty, our hearts, our love and zealous for life could have been destroyed easily. So many things in this world have tried to, yet here we are, here we rise, and we continue to do it no matter what happens. And as much as our society and the world tries to minimize our impact, we must know for ourselves we are irreplaceable. We are irreplaceable. So irreplicable in a way, like unable to replicate. So I just I just encourage people, although Black History Month is over, we step in for Black facts and culture and history all year long. So I just wanted to close out on that note. I feel like I kind of strayed away from a few, more culturally based topics. I know I did some novel reviews and, just wellness and things like that. So I wanted to kind of talk about this because I wanted to leave a good food for thought episode before I take this break. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I enjoyed talking about it. Thank you so much for the engagement, y'all. We got over 300 over 300 streams, okay? Like all the things, all the things, all the things, all the thanks. I'm so grateful for all the engagement and support, even the feedback like I've gotten. It just makes my heart smile so much. And we're gonna do great things on this podcast. I can tell you that right now. And these little 300 plays that I couldn't even imagine would be the case a year ago. I would have never thought like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have over 300 plays. Like what? It's crazy. It's crazy. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's only up from here, and I will definitely chat with you guys on the flip. I'm not gonna tell you a date of when I'll be returning exactly. You'll have to go on our social media and keep up to date with me because I will be keeping you guys the most up to date there. Cause you ain't about to get me to line up here again. So I just wanted to put that out there because you know life be life, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm always coming, with my best foot forward. So just be on the lookout on the Instagram, Twitter, mostly will be my biggest forms of communication as far as when I will be dropping new episodes again. So until then, you guys stay safe, stay well, stream some old episodes, share some episodes. You feel me? Go back and engage with some of the content during this break. And don't forget to look out for the live streams that will be coming your way. Until I see you next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay you. Bye. I just want to express my gratitude for you taking time out of your day to share this space with me. I hope this episode was meaningful and you leave feeling enriched. I appreciate you for being a part of this community of listeners. I hope you gain some fulfillment out of your day. Please do not forget to go follow us here and on all social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram at the platform LTAI podcast and Twitter at the platform LTAI. Also, share any episodes that you enjoyed with loved ones. I appreciate any help getting this community to grow. Sending positivity your way, this is your host, Jasmine, signing off. Stay safe, stay well, and farewell.